So we're going to start by bringing our ceremonial stone that we've had carved for the occasion into the centre of the room here, and the stone will be used to give a ritual welcome to our elders, our visitors from elsewhere, once we go through a couple of things this afternoon. Mar sin yn ffyrdd i'r hyd sy'n gael ei ansyn gas dros Chesi Cwshin. Swisha Àdhamh Broin. My name is Àdhamh Broin, or as I should introduce myself, Àdhamh nach Danish, speaking Danish, Fori, Kirimachi Danish, Korafi Danish. That's my patronymic. That's 7 generations of Gaels back into the past. And today I believe it's fair to say we're thinking about 7 generations into the future, as is the practice of many indigenous peoples around the world. But the Western machine seems to have forgotten how to do that, so we're going to start fixing that. The tide's turning right here, right now. We're all in the tide. This is us turning the tide. This is it. And I could do it, I should. Guys, and everyone, welcome to Glasgow, welcome to the COP26 Coalition open event. This is it. The era of injustice is over. What do we want? And when do we want it? Thank you, everyone. My name's Nguyen. I'm the Scottish half of the COP26 coordination team. This is the last time I'm going to say this. My colleague Camille, my London equivalent, will be introduced after, but she's just as excellent or more as I am, and I'm going to be the host of this event and guiding you through it. Before we start, so what we are having today is a couple of speeches to set the tone, set the scene. Welcome you to Glasgow, welcome you to Scotland, welcome you to one of the most exclusionary and least inclusive COPs that have ever happened in the history of climate negotiations. But we also want to give this a cultural grounding, a cultural ceremony to welcome all those on the front line who have visited us here in Glasgow to hold this event together and hopefully kick off 2 really, really exciting weeks where we can fight for climate justice together here in Glasgow. And before we go into this, just a short remark on language justice. So the COP26 Coalition is obviously, we mainly speak English, but we are committed and we recognize that language is a barrier for everyone around the world to participate in these events on an equal footing, and we're working on this to make this as accessible as we can. So for this reason, we have established a translation app that you can use from your phone. So if you need access to interpreting during this event, you can download the so-called Interactio app. You can log into the Wi-Fi. It's called in-house Landing Hub Events, and the password is $ in-house, all small, all in not capital letters, and 123 after that. $ in-house 123 is the password for the Wi-Fi, and then you can connect to the Wi-Fi, download the Interact app, open the app and enter the code OPEN, all in capital letters, O-P-E-N in capital letters, and then you can select the language that you're most comfortable in participating in this event. So we're going to have English, Spanish, Portuguese, Arabic, Turkish, Hindi and French available tonight. And yeah, so and for all the speakers, speak slow, make the work of our interpreting team easy, speak clearly, try to avoid regional lingo, except if you're Scottish, then that's all right. But otherwise, try to be as clear as possible so that interpreting is easy and everyone gets access to the event equally. Cool, thank you. Otherwise, let's get started. Tonight we have an array of speakers that are really important and central to how our coalition works. For those of you who don't know, the COP26 Coalition was set up in 2018 when it was announced that Glasgow would be hosting the COP to bring together more than the usual suspects. We want to work not only with climate justice groups and NGOs and school strikers and so on, but we wanted to bring in migrant justice groups, we want to bring in trade union groups, faith groups, grassroots groups, local community groups in Glasgow and in Scotland and across the UK. And we have been aiming to build as broad a coalition as possible to together fight for climate justice. And we have done that. We have over 80 local hubs across the UK. We're going to have loads of international actions and national actions across the world and the UK forthcoming this November. And yeah, we are much more than we are here in this room. You're not alone. People across the world are fighting by your side. And that is thanks to some people who have set up the coalition, which I'm going to invite on the stage now. And the first person to do so is Mary Church. Mary Church is head of campaigns, not yet, not clap yet, I need to tell a story first. Mary Church is head of campaigns at Friends of the Earth Scotland, and she has led from the very front the campaign to ban fracking in Scotland. Thanks to her and loads of other activists across Scotland, the SNP were forced to ban the practice in Scotland altogether. She has been leading on just transition work in Scotland, build ties to trade unions and between trade unions and climate groups, and she has been at the forefront, which is I think the most important bit, of pushing against the picture that Scotland is a climate leader and pushing all climate groups in Scotland to show international solidarity with those on the front lines of the climate crisis. So everyone, please welcome Mary Church to the stage.
But welcome to Glasgow, everyone. Welcome to Scotland and welcome to the UK, those of you who have come from overseas. I really can't believe that we're actually saying that and seeing you here in person after 2 years of building up to this point. So as Wang said, you know, we first came together to start creating the COP26 Coalition back in September 2019. And we were really very lucky, actually, to get a good number of in-person gatherings, right? Starting here in Scotland, in the Central Belt, in Glasgow and Edinburgh, but also meeting together in London and virtually, starting to get to know each other before the pandemic hit and we had to move everything online. So it really, you know, this wasn't guaranteed that this was going to happen, that anyone was going to be able to come here in person when the COP would go ahead, and of course we actually called for it to be postponed. But we're really happy to be greeting you here today in person, and we're really acutely aware of those who can't be with us today and over the next fortnight, in particular people from the Global South and people from red list countries and formerly, until very recently, red list countries who have been effectively excluded from this COP and all the activities that go on around it due to the vaccine apartheid, and of course the UK government's incredibly and perhaps deliberately poor mishandling of the whole summit and the logistics of the thing. We're going to hear more about that from one of our speakers virtually later this afternoon. So I'm just going to say like a few brief words about the coalition, why we came together, and what we've been doing over the last couple of years, and also, if I've got time, to squeeze in one or two words about Scotland, right, and our climate record here in Scotland, sort of nation, host nation within the nation, within the host nation of this particular COP. So we've come together, as one said, as the COP26 Coalition, to really create a space for a movement of movements to grow. So recognising that the climate crisis is caused by the same root causes that of multiple interlinked crises of hunger, poverty, racism, sexism, classism, ableism, nature destruction, and of course the same things that caused the COVID-19 pandemic. And that is, of course, a system that is prioritising profit over people. And therefore, obviously, right, the solutions to the climate crisis are also the solutions to these multiple interlinked crises, right? So we have to work together, come together across the different movements, fighting across all these different strands to really create the future that we know is possible, and really putting climate justice at the absolute heart, the core of our work together. So we've been organising across the UK. We've been really rooted here in Glasgow, here in Scotland. We're organising all across the UK and set up 80 or so different hubs around the UK who work on loads of different issues. And our core constituencies here in Scotland have been our justice groups, racial and migrant justice groups, faith, NGOs, trade unions, youth, direct action groups. And internationally, we've been organising as well at that level within the global climate justice movement, bringing in indigenous communities, land workers and peasants, feminist groups, and frontline communities as well. And what we've been doing together over the last 2 years is we've been focusing on learning within our movements, right? So working to centre the voices of those most impacted by the climate crisis, and also developing transformative demands, transformative solutions that respond to the root causes of the crisis, as well as doing the absolute mountain of logistical work that's gone on behind the scenes in this ever-changing and really, really complex situation that we're organising around this particular summit, to enable us to come together at this at COP26 as safely as we possibly can, both in person and virtually. And really importantly, what we wanted to do is create a space for hope, right? So where we can start to imagine collectively and then start to create the better world that we really know is possible. And we're really, really looking forward to seeing the fruits of that work over the last 2 years, really come to bear across this fortnight and long, long after COP leaves time, because that's when the really hard work starts to happen. So I think I have to stop very soon, but I just quickly want to say about Scotland. So you've probably all seen Braveheart, right? And everyone loves an underdog. But before you fall for our First Minister's quite fine rhetoric on climate leadership, just remember that Scotland has been part of the Union for the last 300 years and bears a responsibility, along with the rest of the Union, for its part in causing the climate crisis, right? As a big historical polluter that has got rich off the back of polluting the atmosphere. The Industrial Revolution started right here. And for a global North nation, we've got quite strong targets, right? But only because the bar is set so terribly, frighteningly low for that. And also, what's more, despite we've been missing those targets, right? Last 3 years, we've missed those targets. And our plans, our government's plans for how to meet those targets, right? Even out to 2030, as close to 2030, they're terrifyingly over-reliant on negative emissions technologies, so full solutions, carbon capture and storage, and all the rest of it. So COP26 is a really important opportunity to be pushing the Scottish Government to take more robust action on the climate, not just the UK Government. Please, everyone, remember that in our work together over the next fortnight. So we need to push Scottish Government to go further, do its fair share. And we are already seeing some movement on that, so there was a really important shift from the Scottish Government just at the beginning of last week. Actually, First Minister said that they can no longer hold the position of extracting every single last drop of oil from the North Sea, which is, about time, right? But also quite an important shift from a party whose sort of fundamental economic case for independence, right, the raison d'etre, is hinged on the economic case of North Sea oil and gas. So we're starting to see really important wins. We're not there yet. We need to push the Scottish Government to go further, fix its climate change plan, get back on track to meet targets, and actually move away from the rhetoric on just transition and actually deliver a truly just transition that centres workers and communities most dependent on the fossil fuel industry. And I'll stop there. And thank you very much.
Cheers. And yeah, like Mary is one of the founding members of the coalition, has set all this show up. And the next speaker I'm going to introduce is also one of the founding members. But before he comes on stage, sorry, Asad Rahman is the director of War and Want. He is one of the leading voices in the coalition and beyond for climate justice, and has been that for over 25 years. And nowadays, everyone's kind of like a climate justice activist, right? We all know what climate justice is, and we shout it and stuff. But for a long time, that wasn't the case. For 20, 25 years, it was always like, yeah, we're kind of doing the best what we can. We just have like a few targets, and like it's actually China and blah, blah, blah. But one of the voices that have actually pushed the Western nations to recognize the historic responsibility for like setting up these structures that led to the climate crisis, that was Asad. And Asad was a lonely voice for a long time, but now he has all of us to shout with him and fight for climate justice. Asad, please come on stage, and a big applause for him.
Like Mary, that was a little bit too much. It's our collective effort, of course. Sisters and brothers, thank you so much, and all of them from every corner of the world, and of course from every corner of Glasgow. Solidarity and love from War and Want and from the COP26 Coalition, and to all of the amazing people in the coalition. You'll see over these next 2 weeks the actions and the events, the People's Summit, the Global Day of Action, all been organised remotely by really a small number of people who've given a huge amount of their time and effort to make sure that we as a movement here in the UK can actually stand proudly and say that we centred the realities of climate injustice, that we created a platform for the voices of our movements in the global south to be here, and that our movements could be in Glasgow safely. And we know, as Mary said, many of the barriers, not least our own hostile environment and immigration laws that exist, but also the callous disregard of the UK presidency to the realities for many in the global south. Look, friends, you know, behind me is a banner that says the era of injustice is over, and we have to recognise, of course, that this has been an era of injustice and of multiple crises, right? A crisis of poverty and inequality. Half of the world still locked into poverty. Billions of people going hungry, lacking housing, health, denied the right to live with dignity. We, of course, have a planet that we have exploited to such an extent that right in front of our eyes, of course, every other living being is losing their lives. And we know we are out of balance and harmony with the very planet that sustains us. And of course, we all know climate, right? At just over 1.2 degrees warming, we've seen the killer fires, floods and droughts wreaking havoc in every single corner of the world. Millions of lives and livelihoods lost, not tomorrow, but today. They are being destroyed. And we always have known, those of us in the climate justice movement who have been in these negotiations, we said over a decade ago that no temperature level increase is safe and it's deadly for many, right? And that has now, of course, proved true. And we know that we stand on the edge of catastrophe. We're peering over the edge, right? When the very question and the fate of humanity hangs in the balance. And if we want to stop spiraling out of control, if we want to stop that devastation wreaking even more havoc and affecting the lives of millions of more people, we know that we have to act right now, and we have to act in this decade. But friends, I also want to say, you know, that there's a reason why these crises, of course, have occurred. And those are, of course, the structures of injustice, right? And they've existed for hundreds of years. Whether we talk about from the shackles of slavery to the gunboats of colonialism, you know, from the stranglehold of imperialism to the noose of neoliberalism, we know that there has been a logic behind each and every one of those. And that has been the exploitation of people and resources. The idea that some people's lives could be sacrificed, that they didn't have the same value as ours. And those approaches, racism, patriarchy, all of those things have been hardwired into our political and economic system. So much so that even today, in those corridors of power in the negotiations, our governments are making decisions which basically say the lives of black, brown, indigenous people, of the poor and women, are not seen to be worth saving, and that they, of course, have no value, and that the priority is, of course, the extraction of profit and value. And so, but this has not been a fight that, of course, is just about today. And I want to pay respect because, of course, there are new movements that are emerging, both in the UK and in the global north, right? And they're really powerful movements, and they've helped raise the banner for climate justice. But these movements have existed in the global south for decades and decades, for hundreds of years, right? And they've always called for justice. And, you know, whether it's from Red Clydeside to the leaders in our movements in the global south, those that were once that were murdered and overthrown, from Allende and Mossadegh to Àdhamh and Allende, you know, the reality is this call for justice, of course, has been long made. And that's been made because there have been countless people and countless of our movements who said we simply cannot live within this system. In fact, we refuse to live within a system where our only choice is to die. And it's our love and passion, of course, for justice, right, that is moving this arc. And of course, the wisdom of our ancestors, but also the realities and experiences of our movements. And I want to say just one thing. As Quan said, there was a time, right, in these negotiations when the very word justice was only uttered by a very few of us. And today, of course, every government leader, every institution, even businesses will all talk about the realities of climate justice and will use that word. And I want to say first and foremost that we have moved that conversation collectively. We have moved the dial from climate injustice to climate justice. That's a massive achievement, right? The fact that even governments even have to pay attention to the fact that loss and damage is happening in the global south, that they even have to pay attention to their unmet promises about climate finance. Though that has been our collective work. It's been the fact that we have been the eyes and ears and the voices of our movements, both here and globally, who shone a light on, spotlight on those injustices. But of course, our biggest challenge, as we know, it's not what happens in there. It's what we do collectively to build our power, our collective power. And that's been one of the priorities of the COP26 Coalition. So that our power, of course, is bigger than the power of those who say the only solution is to build back the same. Right? And we have a UK presidency, of course, that has not only refused to act on the climate crisis, but a UK government that has been one of the governments that have blocked the lifting of patents on COVID vaccines. So much so that close to 10 million people have lost their lives around the world, with hundreds of millions of people, of course, with life-changing infections. And in many countries of the global south, less than 1% of people have been vaccinated, whilst we are here in the UK are sitting on the top of millions and millions of doses of COVID. We have created a vaccine apartheid. And of course, the UK government could have acted on that, like it could have acted about the debt crisis. Just in the last decades alone, the global south has handed over close to $4.5 trillion in debt repayments, unsustainable debt repayments to the global north. For every $1 that's flowing from the global north, $24 still flows from the global south to the global north. And in this last year, when we've seen what the pandemic has done, even then, developing countries and the countries of the global south have handed over hundreds of billions of dollars to the global north, even at the very moment that they don't have enough money to be able to protect their own citizens, to be able to invest in the same public system, public health systems that all of us here in the global north have known have been critical to our well-being over this last year. And we know that this has triggered a global recession. Hundreds of millions of jobs have been lost already in the global south, hundreds of millions of more at risk. And what do we have from our government? we have this mantra of net zero 2050. And let me just tell you something about that mantra of net zero 2050. Of course, it's not our fair share of effort. Our fair share of effort of the UK to meet the 1.5 degree target, it's minus 200% by 2030. That's how much of the carbon budget we've consumed. And now rich countries are in there saying we want to consume even more, even what little is left of the carbon budget from developing countries. So it's not just unjust and unfair, but they're banking on unproven, risky technologies that somehow we can dial up the temperature and then somehow dial it back down by sucking carbon out of the atmosphere. There is no technologies that exist that are able to do that, apart from massive land grabs on bioenergy. So, of course, there is a huge fight around that. And there is a fight around the finance. On the table, was 10 years ago, I still remember standing in Copenhagen when Hillary Clinton plucked out of thin air this figure of 100 billion by 2020 for developing countries. Not on need, the need was way more than that. And rich countries for a decade have promised again and again that they would provide that 100 billion. So far, they've provided 22 billion. That's how much they've provided. 80% of it, debt-creating loans. So even developing countries who've been the least to cause this crisis have been forced to take on even more debt to be able to deal with this crisis. On loss and damage, we have the United States and rich countries like our own refusing to accept liability. They're happy to have a conversation as long as it doesn't mean that we have to pay compensation to the global south for the damage that we've caused. That's why our demands talk about reparations. But I want to just say, tough talk on climate, and tomorrow you're going to have world leaders, 200 of them in there, right? Every single one, and they will all talk tough on climate, right? And the UK presidency will say the barometer of success at this climate talks is its cash, cars, canopy, and coal. And I want to just say that it's the most ridiculous 4 Cs that you've ever heard in your life. And at the very same time, of course, the UK government is giving a green light to more oil and gas exploration. It's giving a green light to more aviation. It's giving a green light to more handouts to the fossil fuel industry. And you may have seen the report this morning, right? For the last 3 years, BP and Shell have not paid a single penny in tax to the UK government. At the very same time, they've taken in hundreds of billions in subsidies and have handed out 44 billion in dividends to their shareholders. And then they tell us we can't find 100 billion to pay for our damages that we've caused the global south. What we need is not the 4 Cs, we need the 4 Ts. We need targets, we need trillions, and we need transformation, and we need it today. And that's why it's really critical, the work that we're going to do collectively, both inside and outside, because there's nobody else but us. There's nobody else but us who are going to tell a different story, a story of the world that we want to create, a vision of the world that we want to create. That's not just about a just transition, it's about a justice transition. That isn't about cutting carbon, it's about cutting injustice. It's about creating a world which is fair and equitable. We know that can be done. We have the policies, we have the plans, we know what needs to happen. We simply lack political leaders with the political will to act. And that is up to us to turn the dial, to hold their feet to the fire, to build our movement so strong that no political leader can stand in those negotiations and ignore our demands. And the fact that so many of our movements in the global south are not here, it puts even more responsibility on us to stand and say we will not accept gestures and half measures. What we want of this climate negotiations is an outcome that says this era of injustice is over and begins the transformation that we need, a radical transformation, so each and every person in this world can live with dignity and in harmony with our planet. Thank you, comrades.
I didn't know that promise, didn't I? Thank you, Àdhamh. Thank you. And yeah, Mary and Assad have been at the forefront of creating and driving this coalition. So both Mary and Assad, thank you for creating what you have created. You're responsible for this, for better or worse. So Cheers, guys. But before we move on, the COP26 Coalition was never alone in this. The next person who's going to come on is Tom Ballantine from Stop Climate Chaos Scotland, or short SCCS. And I'm going to tell you a short story about SCCS. As you may have noticed, there's a pandemic on. Lots of people can't come to to the climate negotiations, and it was incredibly difficult for us logistically to organize anything, from venues, from getting people inside this country, from setting up a testing regime and a registration system for events. That was an incredible challenge, and there was times where it would have been easier to walk away, and SCCS never did. SCCS stood with us, organized with us, and tried to put all their strength and all their resources in with us to make this as safe and as inclusive as possible as we can run events. And that is active solidarity. That is what SCCS have been shown. So please welcome with me Tom Ballantine from the board of Stop Climate Chaos Scotland.
Good afternoon, everybody. That last speech is going to be a hard one to follow. Stop Climate Chaos Scotland is a coalition of about 60 organisations from across Scottish civil society. It's faith groups, it's development groups, it's environment groups, it's community groups, it's trade unionists, it's students, you name it, they're in the coalition. Scotland has a population of about 5.5 million. We have about 1.7 million people or more who are members of member organisations. And what we do is we campaign to get Scottish, especially Scottish government to act, but also the UK government and international governments to act on climate change. And we do that in a big way by mobilising people, by getting people around Scotland to come out, to protest, to make things happen. We provide the information to inform action in Scotland by those communities, by those people. And we all know around this room that we need to act now. And if we had any doubt, the IPCC report in August 2021 made it clear that there should be no doubt. There is no scientific challenge to be made. It's code red for humanity. Our planet is on fire. And without collective action, we are heading for catastrophe. The people who will suffer most are the people in the global south who, as we all know, have done the least to cause this problem. It's not too late. We can limit the temperature rise to 1.5 degrees with immediate, rapid and far-reaching reductions in emissions. The decisions taken at COP26 are going to be crucial, but not just the decisions taken, but the actions that follow COP26 are going to be crucial. The outcome, if we don't act, will be catastrophe, environmental, economic and social. The outcome, if we do act, can be a world of green hope, a world of opportunity with environmental, social and economic benefits. We have three very simple things to say on policy. Firstly, on cutting emissions. Cuts agreed at these talks need to get us to 1.5 degrees at most. We need the policies behind those cuts to deliver them. Secondly, this COP needs to see progress on climate justice. Climate justice should inform everything we do. And that means finance to deliver the $100 billion a year that has been promised so many times before and has not arrived. Not just that, but finance for loss and damage. So unless we see these things on the line, advances made, then these are not going to be successful talks. And as Mary said, I think at the beginning, the $100 billion has just been promised and never delivered. Thirdly, and most importantly today, I think, the voices of the global south need to be heard. We want to make sure that the people who are suffering the consequences right now of this situation are heard. As you've just heard about what we're doing, I guess a big part of our role has been on welcoming the international community to Scotland. So there are certain things that I hope you'll have found out about already, but if you haven't heard about them, have a look. We have the Climate Fringe website, which is a website that will give you information about everything that is happening at COP26. So that's one thing. Second thing, we've got venues for you to use, for offices, for places to hold events that are going on. places that you can go to chill out during the conference. And thirdly, we have the homestay website, the homestay accommodation, facility, which if you haven't seen it, if you go to the Stop Climate Chaos Scotland website, you'll be able to find out more. Sadly, it has been massively oversubscribed, but the intention, the desire was and is to ensure that people who can't afford the astronomical prices for hotels in Glasgow would be able to go with and stay with families in Scotland who would put them up through the course of the conference. So I was trying to think what I could finish with, and I guess there's three things. Our voices must be heard. We want no more than 1.5 degrees, and we want no less than $100 billion per year and proper advances on loss and damage for the global south. So I'm just going to end there and wish you all good luck, and thank you all for coming to this conference.
Thank you, Tom. And the next speaker is a friend of mine who I sometimes tease for being super famous and very viral in recent days. Lauren MacDonald is a climate justice activist here in Glasgow. She has been involved with various groups from Fridays for Future Scotland to Food for Thought to provide vegan food across the city. But quite recently, she has been one of the leading voices in the Stop Cambo campaign, the new oil field that is going to be developed. And she recently told the Shell executive, the CEO, where to go. And that was fucking great. Thank you. Lauren, please come on stage.
So I'm here today to talk about the Cambo oil field and the Stop Cambo campaign. So, as some of you may already know, the Cambo oil field is a proposed offshore oil field that's currently awaiting approval from the UK Parliament, which would be situated to the west of Shetland off the north coast of Scotland. If this project were to be approved, it would extract 170 million barrels of oil in only its first period of extraction, which is equivalent to 18 coal-fired power plants running for 1 year. So I didn't really know what I wanted this speech to be about, and I thought about it for quite a long time, so I ended up leaving it till the last minute. But what I want to give you today is a message of hope. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to give you any toxic optimism, because the climate crisis is real, it is here, it's not going away, and it is terrifying. I deny that. But I want you to believe that we can achieve wins. I want you to believe in people power in the face of all this violence. The Cambo oil field is really scary. When the International Energy Agency has just recently stated that in order to stay below 1.5 degrees of global temperature rise, there must be no new investments into oil and gas. This makes it really terrifying to understand that the UK government is completely refusing to back down. And it's terrifying that in the UK alone, 40 new coal, oil and gas extraction projects are due to be approved just by 2025. The Cambo oil field really is just the tip of the iceberg. But even in the face of all this overwhelming, heartbreaking knowledge about where we are heading, knowing that emissions are rising every day, and knowing that the UK government has no intention of changing, even in the face of all this, I cannot help but seriously feel in my soul that we can win the fight against new fossil fuel projects being approved in the UK. The last few weeks have been really intense for me. As Wong mentioned, I confronted the CEO of Shell at the TED Countdown Summit in Edinburgh. Thank you. Yeah, this is without a doubt the most intense and scary thing that I've ever done in my life. So my views might be a little bit jaded by the fact that I spent the last couple of weeks in shock. But I cannot help but feel a sense of optimism. You know, genuinely, my takeaway from this situation is that we are not going to let the Cambo oil field go ahead. And I want to invite you all to believe this with me, however hard that is. In the last few weeks, people all over the world have become aware of the Cambo oil field. More and more people are becoming aware of and joining the campaign to stop it. There's been a massive spotlight on Cambo in the media these past few weeks, and whilst this media attention has been due to the very out-of-the-ordinary situation of being face-to-face with Ben van Beurden, why should I not believe that we will keep on getting stronger and louder, and that the support for the Stop Cambo campaign will continue to increase? When I look back at the past few months of our campaigning, we have been getting stronger and louder. We have been building serious pressure on the UK government with increasing disdain from this project from people all over the country. I mean, you know, we are planning on continuing to work on this harder and harder, so why wouldn't we think that the pressure will keep building and building until the UK government has to back down to save face? So, to anyone here who's in the campaign, to anyone who's thinking of joining, and to all of you who are obviously working against the climate crisis in your own campaigns wherever you're based in the world, please believe that you can win. We can't take away the climate crisis, that's for sure, but we can chip away at our local struggles, and we can get these smaller wins in the bag. And from there, with knowledge of successful pressure campaigning, we can go after bigger targets and we can tackle this problem as well as we can. I think, as activists, a lot of us will probably agree that the default when we're campaigning is to actually believe that we're going to lose. And the problem that we're facing, it is so much bigger than us, and it is genuinely so overwhelming and terrifying, I will give you that. But whilst the climate crisis is a massively complex global issue, we can break that down, and we can point to specific smaller instances of destruction and violence, and we can bring them down. So I want to just remind you that hope is a verb. It's not something that you automatically have or don't have. It can be something that you actively practice. And I think you should do that. Because if we don't have hope that we can win our local campaigns, then why are we even doing them? We need to believe in ourselves, however much that takes and however hard that is. Please understand that together we are so much stronger than we think. We just need to embody that. So I'm going to finish with a quote from a book that I've just finished reading about trauma in activism by Patrice Jones. I would really recommend checking it out. It's called Aftershock. The quote is, "If we don't have hope, then there is no hope." Because we are the ones that are imagining this new world. We are the ones who have hope for a better world. So let's please feel that with me today. And please join me in not letting the Cambo oil field go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. You heard it from this content herself. And the next speaker is not here, which is, it's not an accident. That is the reason for this is because how exclusionary and how badly this conference has been managed. And that is why we have to have her on video. The next speaker is Lily from the Asian People's Movement for Debt and Development. And she has been fighting the dictatorship in the Philippines. She has been fighting for climate justice. She has been fighting for debt and development. So it's on the tin really. But she can't be here because of the vaccine apartheid that we're living in. Because she couldn't come here safely because she faced too many obstacles, and that is the case for hundreds and thousands of activists who needed their voices heard here in Glasgow and can't be here as a result of the UK's mismanagement, the UK's border regime, and the UK's injustice in organising all of this. So please give a big applause for Lily from the Asian People's Movement.
In Glasgow and worldwide to organize people's mobilizations and actions. Today we highlight our struggle for climate justice, to put a stop to the fast-moving train to climate catastrophe and empower our people and communities to deal with the already irreversible and devastating impacts. We are demanding actions from governments, institutions, and corporations, especially those who bear the greatest responsibilities for the climate crisis. We need more ambitious and fair targets. And we need pledges and concrete actions, especially in the immediate and near term. Lofty long-term targets mean nothing without actions now. We have barely a decade left to keep the goal of keeping temperature rise to below 1.5 degrees within reach. And people and communities are already suffering huge losses and dislocation now, and will suffer even more in the years to come. But more than fighting for demands addressed to those in power, governments, institutions, and corporations who must be made accountable and meet their responsibilities and obligations in full, we are in a fight to fully transform the global capitalist and patriarchal system, which is at the roots not just of the climate crisis, but the multiple crises that has created so much suffering, injustice, and inequalities. And today, we pledge to work harder and faster to make system change happen.
Thank you. And yeah, loads of voices are missing in Glasgow this year because of how shit the situation is. But a few have made it over. And our job as climate justice activists and our job as a coalition is to provide a stage, to provide a platform for the voices of those most affected by the climate crisis. And that's not us, that's not Scotland, but that's countries represented by people like Libby. And the next speaker is someone who has actually made it over from the Global South and is a frontline activist. So please welcome with me Kevin from Fridays for Future Kenya. Welcome to the stage, man.
Okay, thank you very much for welcome. My name is Kevin Tai, the way I said, from Kenya. So I was able to come up with Friday for Future Mapa all the way from Sweden because we were touring like different countries, all the way from Sweden. We did a strike there. And last week we were in London. We did a strike in front of Standard Chartered Bank. So today we are here to attend COP26 to pressurize our leader. Yeah. So I'm standing on behalf of my friend. He was not able to come. He's called Yusuf. He's from Pakistan. So our visa has been delayed for more than 2 months. So he was not able to be given a visa. So I'm going to speak on his behalf. Yeah. So, good afternoon. Yeah, the way I've said, my name is Kevin Tai. I'm the climate activist and also environmental from Kenya. So it is my pleasure to be here in Glasgow. In many ways, I wish I was not. I am here because time is running faster out, and we know we are not doing enough. Especially Mapa country are highly vulnerable to impact of climate change crisis. Currently, people in Mapa country are suffering from double crisis. I'm talking about climate change and also COVID-19 because I can give you an example there in Kenya. Not all of us, we have been vaccinated. It took me like a decade to get one vaccine. I was able to pay to access my first dose because UN told us they're going to give us vaccine, but it was like a fake promises. So I'm here to fight for my country, especially MAPA, to be present, to bring voice of our community into negotiation. I'm here because I could, and so much of the community can't. I am carrying them with me and carry voice of someone who is here saying, end to fossil fuel, the way I think Laura has said. It's very important to understand very well who are these funding fossil fuel. On Friday, we were striking in front of Standard Chartered because Standard Chartered have been the man of the bank which have been supporting this fossil fuel company. So we need to try to pressure this bank, especially bank like Standard Chartered, because they have been able to give out like 24 billions to money to this fossil fuel company who are destroying our life, indigenous life of people, especially people from Global South. MAPA, so I've been talking about Friday for Future MAPA. So MAPA means most affected people and areas. So we started this long time ago with a couple of Friday for Future, especially from Asia, Africa, and also part of South America, and also part of Europe. So there's around like 50, almost around 50 Friday for Future mapper active from Africa, Asia, Latin America, Pacific Island here, stay until the end of COP. The way I've told you, we were able to visit Sweden, London. We did some workshop there in Sweden. We did a strike there in London. So we are here to pressure our leader, especially in COP26, because we have been seeing most of the COP has been happening. I think there is only one COP which was like very successful, that was happening in Paris, in France, which they were able to come up with Paris Agreement. But other COP is just been talking, sitting, talking with fake promises. So we are here because politicians, world leader, and media congratulate the youth and portray us as a beacon of hope. It is inaction of those, the same leader that drive this climate crisis. We are here and we are here us because we may only 50 of us from Friday for Future Mapper or indigenous people, but demanding camp of those 2 weeks in Glasgow means we keep global temperature below 1.5 degrees. Yeah. During COVID-19, when it's happening, a lot of scientists, world leaders came up with a solution immediately. But what about climate change? They're just talking, because it's not affecting global south. It's not affecting global north. Mostly it's affecting global south. Compared to COVID-19, it started and mostly it affected global north. So they were to come up with an immediate vaccine, and we don't have a vaccine for climate change. So our leaders need to act now, not later, because people from global south are suffering a lot. As I'm talking now, in Kenya, we have a drought. It estimated that 2.1 million people are going to suffering. Animals are dying. You can go and check even in the email. We have also a flood in around my area, Baringo. People are migrating, and this is due to cause of climate change. And who are the cause? Global north. We know them. And we know them, their names. We know the countries which are emitting a lot of CO2 in the atmosphere. And we are just quiet, maybe sometimes we say it is not our side. And I was very sad to hear, I think it was part of this year when flood was happening in Germany. One lady talk said that I'm very surprised to see this can happen in our country. We have been hearing happen in Africa. This kind of thing need to happen in Africa, in Asia, not in our country. They have been seen most of African or other global south countries as not continent, but just a group of people who are there. So it's very sad to see kind of a person saying that sentence. It makes us feel very bad. So I want to welcome you. We'll be having a strike, a global strike here in Glasgow. That is in 5th. We welcome you all to be there. Please come, let's work. It's going to be one of the biggest strike here because we have been able to do other strike there in Sweden. So we'll be having another one here in Glasgow. We welcome all of the people. And our symbol for MAPA, it was like this. So in solidarity with the MAPA people. Thank you.
This is the voices that you need to listen to during these 2 weeks. Like, not many have made it over, and that is the voices that you need to seek out, that you need to amplify, and that you need to listen to during the 2 weeks. So, yeah, thank you, Kevin. Before I turn to our last speaker, after the last speaker, there's going to be a cultural ceremony to formally and culturally welcome the indigenous leaders from the Minga Indigena to Scotland, to Glasgow. So you're all invited to stay here, to ground yourself, to take in the ceremony, both on a, get welcome to Glasgow on a political as well as on a spiritual and cultural level. So yeah, please stay and thank you all for coming. But now to the last speaker is Camille Barbagallo, the coalition's London-based coordinator. I've not met her in real life until last week, which is a bit mad because I've been working with her for so long. But Camille is the driving force behind the coalition, has been driving all of this, and this all wouldn't be standing without her. She comes not from the climate movement, but from the feminist movement and from the migrant justice movement, and that is why she has driven so hard to make the coalition as broad as it is, so that it's more than the usual suspects fighting together for justice, across Scotland, across the UK. So please all welcome with me Camille Barrogello to the stage.
Good afternoon, comrades, and what an incredible privilege and honour to be with you this afternoon. As you can probably hear from my accent, I didn't grow up around here. In fact, I grew up in the colonies. So I just want to make it really clear that despite what the British Empire might tell you, Australia was and always will be Aboriginal land. Sovereignty was never ceded, and it's time for us to start paying the rent. So welcome. Welcome to the era of injustice being over. I want to also extend a huge welcome to all of the migrants in the room. Whether you have travelled a long way or whether you've just travelled a short way, in making this country your home, I would like to extend a warm welcome. It has not been an easy few years to be a migrant in the UK. And so I welcome you not just because we are hardworking, not just because we keep the NHS, the schools, the universities, the supermarkets, and every other essential service functioning in good times and in bad times. I welcome us and I welcome all migrants in the room because we have to fight this climate change together. And our fight for climate justice must include the freedom to move and the freedom to migrate, whether or not you are fleeing persecution, drought, war, or any horror and violence, or whether or not you're just moving here to make your life and experience something new, and like me, leave a really racist country, you are welcome. So welcome all of you. Thank you so much for joining us today. So when Nguyen and I took over this job, I got to tell you that there wasn't very much of a brief, which will, for those of you who've been organising with us for the last 2 years, that won't really surprise you. So in terms, we met on Zoom and we made it our kind of commitment and our dedication to use organising around the COP26 in every possible moment that we could as a moment of movement building. We have done that by trying to build one of the broadest coalitions that we possibly could. We had one word from Mary and Àdhamh when we started this job, which was that we had to do everything that we possibly could to keep everyone in the tent. So I welcome all of you today for helping Nguyen and I achieve the one thing we were told, which was our job, which was to organise the coalition and keep you all in the big tent. So welcome to this big tent and opening event. We have built a coalition consciously and deliberately that has tried to work with the mainstream elements of our movement. We've also tried to build a coalition that has worked with and supported the direct action elements of our movement. That hasn't always been hard, but thank goodness that we've arrived here today after 2 years of organising together and that we're all still in the same tent. In the last 2 years, we've organised so many Zoom meetings. I can't describe how many Zoom meetings there has been. That has included breakout rooms. We've organised assemblies here in Glasgow during a global pandemic, and we've also organised 2 global gatherings online. Tens of thousands of people have been engaged in the coalition over the last 2 years, and that's given us the determination and the hope to keep going. So I want to, and in terms of the tens of the thousands of people that have answered the call to action on November the 6th, this morning at our breakfast team meeting, Evan, who has been dutifully putting all of this information onto our action map, was able to tell the team meeting that we counted up all of the mass mobilisations that are planned for November the 6th. And as of today, there are over 191 mass mobilisations that are planned as part of the Global Day of Action. So join with me in putting your hands together. You've done that. People around the world have done that. And on November the 6th, millions of people will be taking to the streets to hold those people inside of the UNFCCC to account. So thank you to every single person who has broken their back to make sure that November the 6th is going to be a huge demonstration. And as difficult and unprecedented as the last 2 years has been, I want to first of all, also extend a warm welcome to everyone who's zooming in on the live stream. Everything that we are doing over the next 2 weeks has a hybridity to it that no one's ever really tried before to the scale that we're trying to do. So welcome to everyone who's zooming in into the live stream. As Wong said, the reason that lots of people have to access our program digitally is because of the mismanagement, the racism and the cynicism of the UK government. And we need to be really clear in calling out the absolute bullshit in the way that they've organised COP26. Because of us, because of a 21-year-old woman from Texas who took on the Home Office, who set up a visa support office, hundreds of people have been able to get their visa. That is an unacceptable way to organise a global talks on climate change. Shame on the UK government, and one well done to Rachel for running our visa support office. So welcome, and I cannot wait to get started. I also just want to send out my huge love and appreciation to every single member of staff of the COP26 Coalition and to the hundreds of volunteers that have actually made this work possible. Whether or not that's greeting people at the gate, running our COVID registration desks, whether it's the hundreds of people that have signed up to be a part of our translation team, or whether or not you're speaking or participating at the People's Summit. This is what people power looks like. And I'm so incredibly privileged to welcome you here today to Glasgow. And I cannot wait to see what we achieve over the next 2 weeks and beyond. Welcome.
Thank you, Camille. And thanks so much for all of you to bear with us. This is the beginning. This is not the end. We are gonna end the era of injustice for the next 2 weeks and mobilize as strongly as possible. On Friday the 5th, join for the school strikes. Make it the biggest school strikes Scotland has ever seen. On November the 6th, join us on the Global Day of Action to shut down all of Glasgow, take to the streets with trade unions, with climate activists, with farmers, with indigenous peoples, with migrant justice activists. Come out on November the 6th and hold the government to account and tell them that the era of injustice is over. Thank you all. But before we end the event, now I'm going to hand over to Àdhamh Broin. Àdhamh is a Gaelic singer, writer, and consultant who is pushing for Scots Gaelic in language, in writing, and in music. And for those of you who don't know, Scotland is a very complex country with a very complex history, who has done injustice to others, but also injustice to its own people. And as a result, Scots Gaelic has almost disappeared as a language from the nation. And Àdhamh is one of the leading voices that is trying to bring this back, that is trying to regenerate the culture that has been lost and is trying to bring it back. And he has also been leading on welcoming indigenous peoples and indigenous nations from across the world here, to welcome them here in Scotland, in Glasgow. And I will just now hand over to Àdhamh. But yeah, just a really big shout out to Àdhamh and to everyone else here in the room. Thank you for coming here. And the floor is yours, Àdhamh.
So we definitely shouldn't think of the UK as a monolith. We definitely shouldn't think of Scotland as a monolith. Scotland has been chained to a runaway train, and the Gaels have been chained to the geopolitical entity that has been chained to the runaway train that is the UK. So it's safe to say that as Gaels who belong to here, we also belong to Ireland. We're genocide survivors and clearance survivors. Agus a sinne seo san dúchas na cin hé hiúpan bhí the gunja food deal. So the idea here is to show of our heritage, much of which has to be revived through intuition, through meditation, through spending a lot of time out on the land. We're not building our little corner of the revival on top of the capitalist system, like much of the Gaelic revival is. We're building it straight onto the land where it belongs, and the land will inform everything that we do. I'll explain a little bit about the ritual. We're going to wash the feet of our visiting elders. As I said outside, the honour of having them here is more than I can put into words. It's a lot easier to try it in Gaelic than it is in English. We're going to wash our elders' feet, to wash the dust of the roads. They've travelled a great distance to get here from their feet, to wash the dust from their feet. We're then going to place their feet into this stone, which has been carved by the Galgail project in Govan. Huge shout out to the Galgail project. Couldn't have done this without them incredible people. They also supplied the wooden chair. The Galgail's an amazing place, doing amazing things with amazing people. And then we'll place their foot into the mark. The mark is called Frontline Benhi, which is the mark of the fairy woman. This is a replica of the mark that is out at Dunad in central Argyllshire. So we honour the traditions of the land in Argyll, but we also honour Glasgow, the place where we are just now, by the fact that this footprint is carved in sandstone to represent the city. So I'd just like to say that this is an inclusive ritual. Everyone who's here is a part of it. This isn't some weird, arcane, secret thing. This was revived over many years of meditation and of perseverance and of research. Now, where are our friends from across Turtle Island and beyond? Are they with us? We're going to start with following the directions by our friends from amongst the Coastal Salish people, the Tlingit people, Wet'suwet'en people, and we also have two friends from the Dominican Republic and a couple of other folks who I've yet to get to know as well as I would like. Here with us, folks. Just while I've got the chance then, a big thanks to our other speakers. Thanks to the organisers who have been run off their feet over the last, couple of years actually, but especially the last week. Must have been a bittersweet kind of torture. About 8 days ago I found out that I was going to provide some ritual ceremony here, so as you can imagine it's been all sorts of backflips and somersaults to bring everything together to make it happen. So I appreciate everyone's patience and wait until we get everything into place and then we can get started. So I've never spoken a word of English to my kids. I've raised them from birth, reclaiming their birthright, reclaiming their indigeneity. So my kids are Indigenous Gaels, Indigenous to Scotland, and as I say, they're of mixed Scottish and Irish heritage. And they are keen conduits and vessels for their own culture, their own language, and our life ways. So there's a wee bit of hope, I believe. Nach Eugene, eh? Acharge in nach Tosje Faltje voor Rial, gyda'r carge in the Sima Ache, and an Elin and Tourster. Please give a very warm welcome to our friends from Turtle Island and beyond. Now, part of the beginning any ceremony is to call the directions. And we've lost the practical element of that out of our ceremony. And we've been gifted it back today in a different form by our friends here who are able to provide that part of the ceremony for us. So it's a massive honour, and my thanks go to my friends here to be able to do this for us. We spent the day out in the land in Argyll the other day, and I heard this song, incredibly moving, and I'm incredibly privileged to be able to bring it into this space today.
Hadi Saisosi Deli Sydney, Watotan Hasley, Gidim Ben, Cassia Dista. I'm here to, I guess, give our thanks for being on these territories with a bunch of amazing Indigenous youth who brought me here to COP26. I'll let everybody introduce themselves.
Hi, Rachel. My ex-name, Swa, Cha, Suk, Satanich, Nguyen, Ashedat, and Coastal Neutral territories from where the west coast is, where Canada occupies. It's incredible to meet you today. Israel, Siam Squeeze. Hello everybody, my name is Siam Hamilton. I'm Scala and Nuchano, and I have the privilege of traveling with our Auntie Delee here and some of my relatives that are standing with me. And we're really thankful to be invited to this event, and we hope to see what everybody has to say here. I know that COP26 is probably one of the most exclusionary events that has ever taken place by the United Nations, and that this event here kind of stands in contrast to that, and that there is no exclusion happening in this space, and Indigenous voices are being put at the forefront. So, Gila Kasla for having us.
It's Rachel, it's Charlotte Underwood, Callison, a Pacific. I'm standing here as the youngest member of our group, and I'm here to learn and to hold space, and it's a great honor
It's a great honor to be here with you all and to do this work together.
Hello, my name is Selena Simone. My ancestral ties are to Haiti, which is colonially known as Haiti. I'm so privileged to have traveled with these amazing, awesome femmes. I'm here to just learn, as Shiloh said, and I'm just so appreciative to be standing here with you all today.
Yük Sitini, das Uskukadusal, Tuknapadi Ayafat, of each Quadutin, you do yourself, Akla, Katlaksha, you do yourself. Good day, everyone. It's good to see you. My name is Rise. My Tigit name is Dasu, and I'm really, really grateful to be here today. Quan.
The first song that we'll be performing is the Women's Warrior Song. And a part of the reason that we're performing this is because it was made in honor of missing and murdered Indigenous women, which is an epidemic that we see in Canada, so-called Canada. And it's incredibly, it means a lot to every single one of us. I currently have Coastal GasLink going through or trying to proceed through my territories with 5 man camps being developed. And man camps have been linked to violence against Indigenous women in particular. I know that there are a number of other relatives here who also have missing and murdered loved ones. So I think that we want to do this song in honor of them.
And we ask that if there are any people in this crowd that know this song, because we do know that it's traveled a really long way, that if you feel comfortable joining in, please do.
Aki-o, hey, hey, Aki-o.
So we have another song that we're going to share with you. It's called the Constitution Song, and it's been developed to understand the relationship that Indigenous people have with our colonizer country and the state that occupies our unceded territories. When we sing this song, we are invoking a power that describes the hurtful relationship that we have with Canada. And we're letting this crowd and anybody who hears this song know just how bad that relationship has gotten. So please bear witness, and if you feel, because this is a call and response song, that you can sing with us, please join in. It would mean a lot to us.
And we're going to put the water from Scotland well where the Bruce came through his leprosy. Whether it worked or not is another matter. We're going to empty that water into the bowl here, and for anyone who wishes from our visiting elders, we're going to wash the dust of the journey off their feet and place their foot into the mark. Halachin and Gatl. Oh, Hashin. You know that way you've put the special water in such a safe place that you can't find it? They know. La agua está sagrada. a la tierra in Fife y nuestro king, see, he went there to cure his leprosy. So this comes from straight out of the ground. Can someone translate?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we would like to invite our elders to come and sit in the chair.
Les invitamos a ustedes a que vengan a sentarse en este asiento.
Yeah. Carson. Maak je ook Carson? Eentje doe je Carson. Here's the hikos and gorse. Pass from stage. Each in the blue art. Series. Jezus, naast de studio. Hier in het beeld, hier in het page, laatste week is een chief nationaal. Kerstweek, kerstjullen, kerststenen, kerstgellen, kerstgellen. going to take this stone ultimately to begin to try and reinstitute the practice of the marriage ceremony and other ceremonies to empower the youth to take back the culture. But then if they would like to offer towards that goal, then we would be so honoured.
Nosotros venimos del otro lado del mundo, pero el corazón, la cabeza, los pies son los mismos de todos. Y el gran espíritu habita en todos nosotros. Y aquellos que no tememos preservar, estamos destinados a salvar lo que queda de este mundo. Muchas gracias.
The Great Spirit is within all of us, and those of us who are not afraid to preserve culture are aligned.
Ya que abuelo, que papá ya que no comacha, mi huevito, mi vida, un lata, un pao, amo de tu yante, ya que comeu, chipapai, ya que arco iris, eu amo de tu com pato e mi sama, nau pato, com pato no pau, aí no prato de menino Ini maku, dia tu ini kami komi ya ye. Saksa itu ini kami pukul komi kami lelu pausa. Ini kami nunggu kami. Baby semilla. Halka layai. Kita cikgu cucan baik. Halka tu cucan altuai. Nei itu ayo. Kom maku jadi buka pinyang. Tapi itu pilih kejun jadi jalan kai. Que mucho ahí, que si no me la hay, el único ahí que me neguen, que me la quituan, que me apoyen, que me chipaya y feita que sumo, listo tú ahí mi ta huesa, raya ni, ta huiringe, huesa huiringe ta papel, que la ta tama, que me chipato ahí, que me hago tú ahí, con che, cable con pato ahí me ir, con pato ahí con, cable. Purato ay kay tuwe no mapu, nalato ay nimeli puerta, nanau pato ay nimeli, ya que me cago parang ya que me wen malay, neim pura me kaiman, kume chipanto, kume newen, como elumo ay, kume suchipayay sa sumo, hindi mi piukemo, hindi mi yomo, hindi mi poromo, hindi mi moifuno. Siguro mo lay, kuya niya mi kom mapu. Maple Latinoamericano, Europa, Mapu, como Tofimi, Comene, Wen, Comene, Litur. Moi funto Tofimi, Foro, Tofimi, Piu, Ketu, Tofimi, Come. C'è un livello che sta cucciando, questa che ne viene, questa che era che tu hai. Il Minacam Tofimi, come che c'è. Lo mondo alto hai, alti come tu hai, si che apputa curai. Si pa tu hai abbondanza, cuidane Tofimi, chique malen, che c'è, facciamo male tu. Lady niya tu itong nunggu tu waktu ni cawan ni ya. Kom dia waktu ni kom mau ini yang kemalai koi cokol mapu kepakupannya ini kepotong. Ini kita aku yang kita meo. Pren sa kom malai tu lo. Kisukuno la ya fini. Keme De wen lu ye fini que mene wen tu le vaya y me pimuntu kunye mu vaya y me lista que cachai ko isukuno mula ya y nanti que yen wanglen kom kachanto kom tam le pating man kasi das hawe lu kurao play me imita kom kinye mi así asum ye imita me mapu mi tuwe kom ta chu chuni chupaken la wen yang el tu rayen kom aundan semble tu ay bueno kita bueno Manyong bueno chao bueno kusina mapucha yo
Was that I said there. So, in order to listen from us, from the Gaelic world, from the Gaelic people, from the land here, you want to translate that first?
Él ahorita les va a explicar el deseo que les, o el encanto que les dijo cuando pusieron el pie sobre la tierra.
In order to look in one another's eyes so that our ancestors may also communicate.
Es importante vernos en los ojos para que los ancestros también puedan comunicarse.
And so, what I said there was for them to have spirit in their minds for this work.
Pidió que tuvieran el espíritu en la mente para que esto funcione.
And to have much sense in their words when they communicate what they want to say.
Y para entender el sentido en la comunicación.
And for the taste of honey to be on their lips, so that they speak with fluency for their people and for the cause.
Y pidió que sintieran el sabor de la miel para poder hablar con fluidez.
And then I invoked the strength of the raven.
Invocó la fuerza del cuervo.
Of the eagle.
Del águila.
And of the Fingalian heroes who are our great mythical, legendary heroes of our people.
Y de los héroes míticos de su gente.
Of the strength of the storm.
Le pidió fuerza a la tormenta.
The strength of the moon.
La fuerza a la luna.
And the strength of the sun.
Y fuerza al sol.
And I asked the Great Spirit that we say Gushiari to the ever run, for that to continue into the ever flow of the universe.
Y le pedimos al Espíritu que todas estas fuerzas continúen hacia el futuro, para que siga fluyendo.
I'll sing a song if they need to leave, and that can be the way to draw. I'll sing a song in praise of a woman hero of our people from the 20th century.
Él ahora va a cantar una canción respetando a una héroe del año 20.
Ach, a trian nicht wein, sandon bo via nach gach ma wie ein dangut. Gurtu gush ma wach menena, droku gach ego alle bin hier falgen. Get the batte gargi, ere gewassigem priesen ik navich, woede ne herig, zuku hukin vorreberen skani. Was so lachrene surgen, samin tages nach mucher gebrache, noch go gruier skug, so gwsagdur dy hwyl yd yn sgafarst. Glach gw tŵr ag ys temisir, dyr y hwgw swych yn dysal y mynd yn bahar. Naam bochom as a chose, smig yn jen ag o John ac hyd ban rin. Ha moch eis George dy drwgach, meir y gatjum nam ffwrdd yn arste, rein grif mar padwl gwd, smar a hicog dy lwain ar astal. Han yn nanarth dy gynge, cwrw toloch da hyrs yn gadag, byd o'ch liwthiag yn benten, at sy'n is trwr an y faris y galig. Lwns o chreinio gysawnsw, seniodd unig da hawdos da halys, cwr yn y drinio gydawnse, cwr o beram na myciawns o barstach. Gyrol gyd y gremfet, do hwras gwtiawn pan y miadach, hag ysgwtioch o gandra, gysyn rwgwch siw bian pan iadlw. Oh, shit de ver, fan.
Quiero agradecer por estar acá. Muchísimas gracias.
Only one last thing to say. Shoja Ballantine.
Shit de ver, ja. Welcome
to city.
Ja, paalt te worden creëren hoe dat doen.
Right, everyone, can I please have the biggest shout out to the Minga and Indigena now? Family who've held the ceremony in such a beautiful way. Before I close, I also want to say some other words. there has been a lot of background work here, so I would like all of you to give a biggest shout out to all the interpreters that have been working in the background to make this accessible event for all languages that we could find interpreters for. So please give a shout out to Carla, Abel, Dorothy, Carola, Tanya, Daniela, Ala, Amina, Asufi, Naren, and Zarka. Tech team behind the scenes, for all the media team that has been trying to make this as accessible as possible for people who can't be here, who can't be in Glasgow to follow this. Thank you so much, everyone. And before I go, you're free to linger for a few minutes, ask questions to the performers, to the speakers. But I also want to invite you from tomorrow on at 5 o'clock to come to our movement assemblies every day at Bath Street, Adelaide Place, where we're going to update you from what's happening inside the negotiations and talk about what is going on. And every day, 5 o'clock. Also, join us for the school strikes, join us for the Global Day of Action, join us for the People's Summit, and also join us tonight for a party here at 6 o'clock in the evening in the London Hall. Thank you.
Hi there. I am now following some of the indigenous folk that just came. They're in a rush and they don't have time to speak to me, but they said if I can walk with them, they'll give me a couple of answers. These are people who came all the way from South America to participate in a ceremony with indigenous Scots people to open this and to actually make the COP something that goes beyond the usual blah blah blah, which Greta has so family said. So here I'm going to speak to hola. ¿Cómo te llamas? Gloria. Encantado, Gloria, soy Nicolás. ¿De dónde eres? This is Gloria, de Ecuador. ¿Y a qué cultura perteneces? Zapara. ¿Eso queda en la Amazonía? She belongs to the Amazonian culture of Zapara, in Ecuador. ¿Y qué vienes a hacer aquí?
Bueno, acá yo vengo por COP26 de Minga Indigena.
You're here for COP26?
Para poner nuestra lucha, nuestra Amazonía.
Gloria, ¿se va la gente? Yo te acompaño. She's here to tell COP about what her people want them to know.
Estoy aquí porque nuestra respiración es cuidar nuestro territorio. No queremos una situación de petróleo que era el ecuatoriano tiene que economizar de otra manera.
They're desperate to stop the exploitation of their land. The government of Ecuador needs to find another way of finding money, not extracting from the earth and taking away and destroying the land, because you may know the Amazonian of Ecuador has been destroyed because of petrol. It's raining in the Amazon. Climate change. We can't fish. We live off the earth, and we can't do that anymore. Our food, our medicine, and our forest is being killed. Pues muchísimas gracias. Gracias a todas por lo que están haciendo por nosotros. Y gracias por el mensaje, que la Pachamama las cuide. A todas. Gracias. And so that is what's going on in here, in this alternative COP, to an extent. Tomorrow, we'll go inside and see what's going on in suits and ties. Although I must say, I just came from there earlier, and it wasn't exactly that. You had a whole lot of people. You had people who were, young people, activists who were there, observers, delegates, and some people dressed in indigenous clothes as well. So you have a whole series of things going on. Hell, COP is quite the festival. Let's hope it doesn't end up being a disappointment. But as for this experience, which you just saw live streaming from inside, it has been quite magical. Back to you. Yeah.
Hola a todas y a todos. Hi everyone. I'm from Colombia, and right now I'm in Oxford. The problem I am here to talk about is open coal mining in Colombia. The north of Colombia is one of the most beautiful places you will ever visit and that you will ever see. It overlooks the Caribbean, and it is an incredibly diverse place. At the highest northernmost point, we have the largest open coal mine in the world. It's called El Cerrejón. El Cerrejón is currently owned by 3 British companies, Anglo-American, Glencore, and BHP. These companies, for the past 30 decades, have taken water, land from the indigenous Guayu community and the Afro-American communities that live in La Guajira. La Guajira right now is the place in Colombia with the most child mortality due to malnutrition. This all comes because the community is unable to feed itself because of the mine that is there. Because the mine has taken away the possibility of people being able to take water that they need to grow their own food. Therefore, they have been forced to either starve or work in the mine itself. I'm telling you all this because the causes of that come from a large process of neo-colonial extraction. And that neo-colonial extraction is also important that we take into account here. So what I'm asking you to do is to fight directly the companies that are driving the destruction of ecosystems and that are taking those gains and putting them here in the UK. So knowing that the profit is done here. What people in the global north here can do to stop the genocide and the ecocide that is happening in El Cerrejón right now is make the companies accountable. Those companies are registered here in the UK. Bring the fight to the London Stock Exchange. Bring the fight legally for those companies to register their financial assets abroad in a way that is transparent and in a way that is accountable. And lastly, just please listen to the voices that are coming from the front lines that are saying that the destruction is not going to happen in the future, that it's happened in the past and that it's happening now.
Hi, so we've just come outside of the tent where we've had our opening ceremony, and I've caught up with Dilly, who is one of the indigenous people who's come here to make her voice heard at COP26. And I'd just like to ask you, thank you so much for coming. Would you like to introduce yourself and where you're from?
Sure, Hari, Saisozi Dali Sydney, Wet'suwet'en Hasli, Gidimden Kasiak Dista. My name is Dali, I'm Wet'suwet'en, and I am from Gidimden clan. I'm here at COP26 with an amazing youth delegation of Indigenous youth from so-called Canada, and we're currently fighting so many extractive projects throughout our various territories. And we just performed the Women's Warrior Song, and it was because of the impact that extractive industries has on missing and murdered Indigenous women, or violence against Indigenous women, I think, and how it escalates and amplifies that epidemic.
It's really powerful moment in there. So it's filming, so it's difficult to kind of feel like I'm participating so much, but I think a lot of people listening would have felt really connected to that. Would you like to say just something about how music is important to you, expressing these concerns that you're talking about?
Yeah, definitely. I think that the next song that we did was the Constitution song, and the music is important to us because the sound or the beat of the drum is equal to the beat of our hearts. And what we talked about within the Constitution song was the fact that Canada is on stolen land, that we're not looking for a just transition, and that extractive economies are not our way. Indigenous economies are the way to go, because we recognize everything as a part of our economy, which means the wealth in the land, the wealth in our cultures, the wealth in our women, the wealth in our people in general, and the wealth in our history and our culture. And that's incredibly important to us, especially right now. As I said, a number of us have extractive industries on our territories, and My people are facing coastal GasLink. We're fighting a pipeline right now, as well as a proposed open pit coal mine, which blows my mind in this day and age. So I appreciate everybody for people having us here, and I'm so incredibly grateful for the amazing youth that have brought me.
Amazing to see all of you together coming here, and we're really, I think we just have to say, people in the United Kingdom in general really sort of looking to you for strength, to you and your people, for all of the amazing sort of grassroots activism that you've done, and we're so glad to be here profiling your voices. So is there anything else you'd like to say before we break, because it's starting to rain here?
I did just want to say thank you, and I'm so appreciative of this space and putting Indigenous voices first, as well as to our friend Àdhamh, who took us out to the land and we got to make an offering, which is incredibly amazing. I think it's Gaelic Consultant on Instagram. And yeah, it was just such an amazing experience to see some of the beautiful land here, the beautiful untouched land still.
Well, thank you again for talking to me at the end of quite an intense ceremony and event, and I really hope that you get something out of the COP process while you're here, and you enjoy your stay in Scotland.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you. So we've been here for just such a really powerful event, talking to the Indigenous activists here from the Minga and Indigena, and the youth activists that we were just talking about. And also, I'm just so glad to see the Scots-Gaelic connection being really brought to the fore here. So we're looking at indigeneity and how that can really help us find our way out of the climate crisis. It's been a really inspiring event here by the COP26 Coalition, and really I hope setting the bar for some of the issues that are going to be addressed by climate activists who have come here to sort of make their voices heard outside and hopefully inside COP during these next 2 weeks. So I think we're going to wrap up. This was a COP26.tv production in collaboration with the COP26 Coalition. If you would like to follow actions, debates and discussions from inside and outside COP, the alternative view, throughout the next fortnight, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, COP26.tv. You can follow us on Facebook as well, and if you're interested in, if you're following Extinction Rebellion and other channels, you'll also be able to follow some of what we're broadcasting through there. So yes, please share with your friends and people that you think might appreciate or need to hear about these issues, and we'll be with you again tomorrow for more actions to start a COP on Monday.
Hola, hi, my name's Gabby. I'm from São Paulo, Brazil, and today I'm going to be talking a little bit about the Amazon fires. The Amazon rainforest has a very important role, as it is the habitat of numerous species of fauna and flora, and it is also responsible for a huge amount of CO2's absorption in the planet. However, due to the deforestation that is happening, the Amazon is now emitting more CO2 than it is absorbing it. The deforestation process occurs due to companies that want to profit off the territories, either by using it as pasture, using it to plant soy that is transformed into cattle feed, or by exploring it. This process is being authorized by Brazilian laws that are being imposed by the government that also profits off it. Taking into account that this process and the fires are a consequence of companies' actions, consumption has a huge role in it. The more people buy from these companies, especially internationally, the more the fires will happen. So it is very important that everyone, above all the global north, starts being more aware about the companies they're consuming from, and boycott the ones that are responsible for the Amazon fires. The Amazon deforestation leads to the destruction of indigenous lands, the killing of a huge amount of biodiversity and people, and worsens global warming. If you want to know more about this process and know the names of these companies, access the Instagram account at extinctionrebellion.brazil. Please act now.
Hi there, it's Nick here again, and I am standing here with a beautiful family who have welcomed the indigenous members of other parts of the earth, including Turtle Island in Canada, as well as other indigenous groups from South America, and they have a story to tell us. You guys, tell us a bit. First of all, tell us your names, please.
Àdhamh Broin.
And where are you from?
Well, our people are a mixture of Irish and Scottish Gaels, and other bits and pieces, as most of us are these days. And we live in Glasgow. I grew up in Argyllshire, which is on the west coast of Scotland.
And what did you come here to do today?
Well, over these last several years, we've been reconstituting and reviving the land-based rituals of our people, the Gaelic people, and bringing that to bear in the welcoming of Indigenous people from other places. We've had other Indigenous nations over to Scotland and out on the land with us in the run-up to COP over the last few years. And so here at COP, with the entire Indigenous planet just about arrived onto our land, we're able to welcome so many people at the same time and bring all the kind of things that we've been working on over the years to really bring it to bear and give them folk who come here and bring so much tradition of their own with them, be able to meet that in kind and make it a really special coming together.
You know, I find it very interesting that you talk about Indigenous folk, and we often think, perhaps Eurocentrically of us, that Indigenous folk are brown people in jungles somewhere, which of course is not the case. How do you consider yourself Indigenous then?
Yes, I mean, probably 15, 20 years ago, I wouldn't have considered myself Indigenous because I was just another colonised white person living in a colonised country. I suppose genetically, ancestrally, I'm a member of a colonised people, and my connection with my own traditions, with the land, with our language have been broken, and therefore when these fine people came on the scene, I didn't want them to experience the same thing, so I had to do a lot of work in the lead up. My wife and myself made the decision we were going to have kids, so what did I want for them? What kind of connection did I want them to have with land, with language, with heritage? Did I want them to just be, other just colonised white people causing more harm than good? Definitely not. So we wanted to step off the capitalist, entitled train and build back better on the land, from the land, and with the land involved in the process, and therefore the blessing of our ancestors.
And that's really beautiful. So thank you for that. But now tell me something. With regards to climate change, have you experienced it since you're living on the land? What has your experience of climate change been here in Scotland?
Well, unfortunately, I've not been able to get back out to the land where I grew up, and we've spent most of our time in Glasgow, certainly during the lives of the children I've been living in Glasgow. So here, obviously, the impact has certainly been less than it would be. Hugely different to the lives of people in the global south and what they're dealing with. So we have to be perfectly honest, we really have no idea compared to so many people in the world what the impacts of climate change are and will be in the future. But having said that, we're not daft, and we're trying to look ahead. And by stepping away from the capitalist model and building back on the land, then we're making ourselves part of the solution rather than the problem.
Okay, well that's wonderful. And do you have a message for the leaders who are meeting just on the road over there? What would that message be?
Yes. The message would be that you are our servants, and you better get with the programme here, because this work needs done. You better make all these financial levers happen, and you better put down your pens and actually get your hands dirty and do something, because if you don't, we're taking you down.
And that is a wonderful way to bring our show to the end. Thank you very much for your time. Remember to join me live tomorrow at 12 at COP26 TV, where we're going to unpack and show you the inside guts of what's going on here in this Scottish city. Thank you very much, and have a great evening. That's Nick, out.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys.
My name is Gloria Kasambulus. I'm a climate activist from Kaduna, which is in the northern part of Nigeria in Africa. The problem I'm talking about today is the impact of climate change. And in the northern part where I come from, we're seriously experiencing this impact where a lot of vulnerable persons are being affected. For example, the low income, women, children, elderly, including persons living with disability. They was hit by this. impact. Some of the impacts of climate change is variation in rainfall pattern in terms of unpredictable onset and cessation of rainfall. We're also experiencing erosion, loss of biodiversity, excessive heat, food insecurity, soil fertility, land degradation, which has caused decline in crop yield and loss of livelihoods. The Niger Delta is known to have diverse ecosystem of mangrove swamp, freshwater swamp, rainforest, and is the largest wetland in Africa. It is said to be amongst the top 10 most important wetlands and marine ecosystem in the entire world. But due to oil exploration, the area is now characterized by contaminated streams, rivers, forest destructions, and biodiversity loss. The area is an ecological wasteland. It's so sad to say that. This affects the livelihood of the indigenous people who depend on the ecosystem services for survival, leading to increased poverty and displacement of the people. I am asking that we join our voices to say no to fossil fuel, no to exploration and exploitation. This is a call to the global north to support in calling on Shell, other oil companies, and the Nigerian government to curb emissions and gas flaring, to strengthen laws and policies that relate to the environmental concerns in the Niger Delta. It is time for action, and now is the time.